Well, now time for guest number 2, Heather.
I love this guest. Yes, exactly. And it's going to be a really great Essex conversation, pure Essex.
Yeah, Katie Montgomery is the new executive director for the Essex Shipbuilding Museum and the Historical Society as well. And she is, I think it's her second appearance on CAPA today. It might be even more than that, but I'm not sure. How are you doing, Katie? Good to see you again.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait, have we just done this?
We just talked to you maybe a month ago.
Yeah, we did a Zoom.
Yeah.
But my first time talking to you in this role was that Zoom. So.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But I've seen you in other places around town.
Yeah, we work together in different roles.
You're even better in person, though. You really are.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So, Katie, how is life over the Shipbuilding Museum? How's summer going so far?
It is off to a great start. We have visitors coming through all the time. All of our exhibits in the orientation center have been rehabbed, and they're really fresh and a new way to look at some old history. And the shipyard is buzzing with activity and evolving all the time. And then we have some great summer programming that we're excited to have gotten a good start on.
Yeah. So how long has the museum been there? And I think it's important to know it's an active work area too.
Yeah. So the museum story is kind of interesting. The Historical Society was founded in 1937. And that was mainly just a group of people who were really into Essex history, and they came together and they did research and they wrote papers. Then in 1976, in recognition of the bicentennial of the Revolution, they added on the Shipbuilding Museum. So then they started to house the collections. We started to amass artifacts. And that started happening in the 1835 schoolhouse that we still actually inhabit at 28 Main Street.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there are exhibits and our archives live up there. In 1990, the Evelina Goulart was raised, it had sunk down in New Haven, or New Bedford, I believe. It sunk, and someone raised it up and decided to return it home to Essex. So this is a boat built in 1927 for the Goulart family, and it's this beautiful story about, the American dream. You come over, this Portuguese family, and they got their go fishing, and they all threw in to build this boat, and it fished for years and years until eventually it went derelict, like sometimes wooden boats do. And it was brought back here. And
where did it sink? Did you say that
It
already?
was New Bedford.
Bedford, yeah.
New Bedford. So they brought it here and they pulled it up right behind us on this land. So this acre of land that goes pretty much from Ripple across the boat ramp and over where all that Phragmite is an acre that was set aside in 1668 for the men of Chibaco, which is now Essex, to build ships.
So they recognized this river and this land as a good place to build ships.
Yes.
Or were they really good at it and they just decided to do it here?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
It was a mix of circumstance and the craftsmen that really they took to it and they got really good.
So Katie, you and I were talking before, and I'd love for you to just run through this. How originally the ships that they were building in that 18th century, let's start with that, fit in this river, and they were meant for fishing, and it was all to scale. And as the fishing industry grew, things changed. Do you want to run through that? And for instance, you got bigger boats.
Sure. So really the evolution of the American fishing schooner, it started, I would say, with the shallops. And shallops were the small boats that were brought over by the European settlers. So, everybody knows the Mayflower. And when the Mayflower came here, it was too big to bring over and hit Plymouth Rock, right? So they actually had small boats on board the bigger boats that they would then bring a shipwright along, and he would stitch it together because they would have it in pieces.
Oh my gosh.
And the shipwright would build the small boat, and they'd take the small boat to shore because you don't want to crash your big boat.
Yeah.
And those small boats, I believe, were really the inspiration for the Chibaco boat, which was designed here and on the Chibaco River, which is the Essex River now. And the Chibaco boat was like the truck of the 1600s, like a pickup truck. And really the people of Essex, they would build these boats. The rumor is the first one was built in the attic of a Burnham's house, and they had to take the wall down to get it out of the attic.
Something about that.
Sounds like a Burnham.
Yeah.
That's a Burnham movie, yeah.
If you know a
I
Burnham,
think I'll
you're
build a boat here in my attic.
So the tobacco boat, they were these big, bulbous, like a cat schooner. So
You
two
have one
masts.
over there, right?
Yes, we have one over there. It's our best idea of what the boat would look like. There isn't a lot of like plans or documentation from way back then. And so that was Harold Burnham used paintings and different anecdotes from stories and letters to figure out what that boat would have looked like.
Yeah.
And
Harold Burnham's the master shipwright right next door.
yes,
to
Harold
you.
Burnham's master shipwright, who he actually operates a commercial yard that is right next door to the museum. So we interpret his work to the public, because as a small museum, we probably, if we started building the big ships, we wouldn't know what to do with them. They don't really run out of the Essex River. They're a little too big.
Yeah.
So Harold builds them and we just talk about it. And we'll help out too. We're all handy in that way.
That's cool.
Well, that's just the sentence that I wanted you to land on, is that these boats are too big for this river.
Yes.
That's what ended up happening. Like the Evelina is one of them, right?
Yeah, so eventually the boats got bigger and bigger as the fishing industry started to increase. And so the fishing industry in Gloucester was booming. And at that point in time, you didn't want to use the Gloucester waterfront to build boats. You probably could, but you're wasting great dock space. And they have all these deep water docks that you could just stack boats in. And they say in Gloucester in the old days, you could walk across the entire harbor just from boat to boat.
Wow.
So we would build them here where we don't have that deep water dock space. And we'd build them and leave them light. So there wouldn't be any ballast put in them. And if you know a little bit about boats and stability, you need a bunch of weight in the bottom to keep it sitting where you want it to in the water. But they would float them out light, and then in Gloucester they would add all the weight to it. So the Goulart came over in 1990, and that's when we acquired the shipyard that is like the heart of the museum now.
Gotcha.
Well, what is so interesting to see that Goulart is it's so big. And you can, out of water, you really get a sense of the scale of those later schooners, right?
Yeah, and she wasn't even the biggest.
Yeah, yeah. And apparently there's also a motor on the Goulart originally, and that was a transitional time too, right?
Yes, so the Goulart's an example of a transitional vessel. When they started to be purpose-built to have engines in them, so there'd be a steam engine inside. And that boat actually has a lovely history. It's really interesting because from May to October they fished it as a sword fishing vessel, and they'd have the full sails on it, the bowsprit with the pulpit at the end. And then the rest of the year they'd bring it into a boatyard in Gloucester, they'd take all of that sword fishing gear off, and they would add dragging gear, and then they would drag all winter. So they'd put a cabin house on it. Like we have two separate models
Transformer
inside.
Yeah, right.
You can
Exactly.
see that difference.
Or Yankee, like efficiency or
ingenuity or whatever
yeah,
it is. Yeah.
Or just the need to keep working.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So Katie, for folks who have never been to the Shipbuilding Museum, what can folks find inside? Is it family friendly? How big's the campus? Things like that.
So we have a pretty large campus. We are family friendly. We like to think of ourselves as hands-on and participatory. There are some we have a teaching collection, so you can actually pick up tools that were used 200 years ago and maybe take a whack at it. And so it's really great. The kids love to be able to swing hammers.
Yeah, jeez. How many chaperones per kid?
Yeah, right.
You find they have a surprising amount of self-preservation instinct,
right.
and they generally don't hit themselves or each other. But so our campus goes from 66 Main Street. We have the Orientation Center building with some air-conditioned, curated exhibits like you would see in a regular museum that leads you out into the shipyard. And the shipyard is an active working site, so there's all sorts of stuff going on in the shipyard. And there's some interactive exhibits that you can touch and feel and play, and you can talk to people who are actually doing the work. And then you can go up the hill to 28 Main Street, where we take care of the 1835 schoolhouse. It was the central schoolhouse for a while for the children of Essex. And in there are more exhibits and our archives, and out back is an ancient burial ground. And you can explore, and we have all of the headstones documented. We get quite a few people soul searching up there looking for their relatives.
So what's the oldest grave up there, do you know?
The oldest one.
And the only reason I ask is in Gloucester we've got a really old one.
Yeah.
I think we found
The
like
first parish burial ground.
1619.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Unbelievable. Huh?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And a lot of people come and they're like, that's my great, 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 great. And you're like, wow.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So, Katie, if people want to find the Shipbuilding Museum or learn more about it, how can they go about doing that?
Oh, we are online. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on our website, which is essexshipbuilding.org.
Beautiful. Well,
Great,
thanks so much for spending time with us. We've got to get back there. We have to do a show over there sometime.
Oh yeah, definitely.
After Greenhead season,
And
right?
we also, I think we talked the last time, and we can do it the next time, about the Crossroads program with the Smithsonian that you guys are involved in,
Yes,
right?
yes. So we're hosting a Smithsonian exhibit. It's a collaboration put on by Mass Humanities, or enabled by Mass Humanities, and we're so grateful. And that is going to start September 10th and run till October 22nd, and that would take an entire segment to talk about.
So we'll do
Right.
that. We'll
That's
do
a
that.
big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome
yeah.
stuff.
So we'll connect with you just before that. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Katie. It was great chatting up
Yeah.
with you again, and
Yeah,
catching
thanks
up all
for
the
having
time.
me.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks on Cape Ann Today, probably.
Exactly.
All right.
All right, just keep
Great.
it going.
Thank
Yeah, Katie Montgomery, folks. She is the new executive director of the Essex Shipbuilding Museum, as well as the Historical Society as well. So it was great catching up with her.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.